Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Live Magic Q&A Tea Party with me, your host, Madame Pamita, and our special guest. Each week we have a special guest, someone always rotating, always someone different. And this week we have an amazing special guest. Our guest is Theresa Reed, the Tarot Lady. If you're watching this on YouTube, you want to join us live, we do this as a live thing every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. And it takes place every Sunday, except for the first Sunday of the month. First Sunday of the month, at that time, I teach a paid workshop. But every other Sunday of the month, we're here and we do a free thing, which is the Live Magic Q&A. If you want to be a part of the Live Magic Q&A, you want to be here asking questions and joining us live, you can do that. Just go over to spellsquad.com, spellsquad.com, and you can sign up and you'll get a link to join us in our Zoom meeting, come into the clubhouse, the secret password to come into the clubhouse, and you can join us and you can ask questions for our guests and for me. If you don't know who I am, I'm Madame Pamita. You can find me on my site, my website, parlorofwonders.com. You can also find me on YouTube as youtube.com, Madame Pamita. Instagram is instagram.com, Madame Pamita. And pretty much if you put Madame Pamita, you'll find all the things. I usually use that as my name for everything. So if you're on Twitter or any of those other places, it will be Madame Pamita, all one word. One announcement I have coming up. I've got a book coming out called The Book of Candle Magic. It's going to be coming out October 8th. So I would like you to hold that date because on October 8th, we're going to be having, I think, Theresa, you're going to be maybe a part of it, right? You're going to be one of the, we're not announcing what the things are yet, but you said you were going to be a part of it, I think, with Pleasant?
I think so. I have to find out all the details. I don't know yet.
Okay.
Anything Pleasant does, I want to do, though.
Okay. So we're having a special party on October 8th. That's a Thursday. That's the book release party. And we're going to be having that as a live Zoom meeting so that you get to actually have your video cameras on and chit chat and talk and have fun. And we're going to be doing some really fun events that day. So keep that in mind. And if you want to pre-order the book, now's the time. You can do that. Contacting your local bookstore. That's an amazing way to make a difference in a small business by pre-ordering that book through a small bookstore or a mom and pop metaphysical store. Or you can, of course, order it online, all the usual places, including my website, but of course, Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all those places as well. You can pre-order there and then they will ship it out to you. Any place that you order is great. I'm so happy that you're interested and that you're buying it. We're having such great enthusiasm for this book. So any place that you buy, it's great, but I'm also encouraging people to take a little extra step to order it from their local bookstore to keep those bookstores afloat during this tough time, because these are the places that Theresa, myself, and all the writers and authors and teachers that you love, these are places that we can go and teach. So if you want to keep those places alive, so we have a place to come to your town once we're able to travel again. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our lovely lady, the Tarot Lady, Theresa Reed. Theresa has been doing tarot for I want to say 1,000,000 years, right? It probably feels like 1,000,000 years.
Give my age away.
You're ageless. You're ageless, my darling. So you're probably doing tarot for many, many lifetimes. Let's just say that, including this lifetime since you were 12 years old, right? You were a little kid when you were doing it.
15.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So you've been doing it since you were a teenager. You've been teaching tarot. You've got several books out. The newest book that she has coming out is Tarot No Questions Asked, which is a great book. Oh my gosh, it's an amazing book. Super excited about this book. It's out right now, right? It just came out like a couple days ago, right?
Yep. About 2 weeks ago.
Oh my gosh, I got to get on it and order it and I have to have it in my shop too. So I'll have it in my shop and I'll order it and I'll have it in my shop in a couple of days, I'm sure. Yes, this is an amazing book that is about reading tarot, like what we would say, we wouldn't call it a cold reading because a cold reading is like a sleazy reading technique, but it's reading without asking a question, just reading straight from the cards, reading for someone. That's my impression of what the book is about, correct?
Yeah, we covered that. General outlooks are very difficult. Most people don't attempt them. And doing divination, nowadays divination's not cool anymore, but the book is really about reading intuitively with really very little to go on. Although even if you have a lot to go on, I mean, that doesn't matter. Sometimes those are some of the best readings. But it's really, the book is more about how to get more intuitive with your reading. You know, how to not just, this is what You know, the magician means talent and skill, but it can mean a lot of different things depending on the question and also what you're feeling at the time you're doing the reading.
Yeah, an amazing topic that no one really covers, like the whole technique of reading, and something that when I teach tarot and have taught tarot in the past, people ask like, well, how do I do it? And what do I do? And we go spend so much time on the cards and
Yeah.
understanding the cards that we often don't get to that part. And so this kind of fills a gap that's definitely needed out there to help people that are kind of the things that we stumbled on in our own studies, like we just sort of practiced and learned and did that, and now you're kind of distilling it for someone who's coming up, or even people who are experienced who want to expand their technique to bring in some more intuitive readings. That sounds amazing. I'm super excited about it.
Well, my goal
That's
always
great.
is to help people become more confident readers. You know, most
Yeah.
people can read, but I think a lot of times people lack confidence either in, I'm not going to remember the cards, or in their own intuition. And I am always like, no, 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 no. You can do this. You can do this. Let me just help you. And it's not that hard to get to learn to trust your instincts with that stuff.
So this is really a book about intuition, in using your intuition in your readings and using that, how to develop that gift once you sort of once you already are a little familiar with the cards, or if you're learning them, I suppose it could, if you're coming up from the beginning, learning that as you're doing it probably is very helpful as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh my gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait to dive into it. You also have a class coming up as well, a beginning
Yep.
tarot class coming up. We were talking about this in the beginning. This is exciting.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I
What's
love
that going to
working with
be?
newbies. I love working with newbies because so oftentimes people are coming to tarot or even astrology and they're very intimidated. And I also have to say, it's not you. You just haven't had the right teacher. You need to be guided. So this is for total newbies. If you already know tarot, yeah, I mean, that would be too basic for you. But the goal is to help people get accustomed to, okay, this is what tarot's all about. Here's some spreads, here's some intuitive exercises, and here's how to put it all together. So it's a four class course. And if people go to my website, thetarotlady.com, and they click on classes, they'll see Tarot for Beginners. And it starts in October, the first Thursday of October. It's 4 Thursdays in a row.
I love, I'm going to say something and maybe I'm overstepping my bounds. So tell me to back off. It is Mars retrograde. You could tell me you can flip me
Oh,
off. We're going to talk about that. But, I think that even people that have some experience with tarot can do well in a beginner class, because I find when I go back to a beginner class, now I have been reading for decades and decades and
yep.
decades now, but when I go to take a beginner class, or even when I teach the beginner class, the students sometimes point out things that I never thought of. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
bet you that even someone that's an experienced reader could take your beginner class and they would learn something. They're not going to walk away going, I knew everything there,
Well, I also teach yoga, although my studio's been closed since COVID. And one of the things that's so interesting, when people come to yoga, they always are just dying to do crow pose. They want to do the most complicated poses right away. And I always say, let's go right back to the basics, especially when I see those show offs, because the basics are so bloody important. I don't know why we always want to do the fanciest stuff when it's like, you always want to go back to the basics, back to the basics, back to the basics, with tarot, with astrology, with everything, because that really truly is where the magic is. It isn't the fancy stuff. It's the basics that matter the most.
Well, I also feel like too, it's like the more you know about something, the more you realize you don't know, the humbler you are. You
Yep.
know what I mean? A sense of like, I go, there's so much to explore in tarot. There's so much to explore in magic. I can share what I know. You can share what I know, but I would like gladly go to a beginner class with you, because I'm sure you're going to give me a different perspective, even on cards that I'm super familiar with, techniques and things like that. So I would say, yes, it's for a class for beginners, but even people who may want to kind of brush up on things or maybe get a
Right.
different perspective could get something out of that class as well. So I'm opening up the gates a little wider. Maybe you don't want the kids that know anything in that class. I
Oh,
don't know.
listen, though, I don't mind working with seasoned pros. The problem, though, sometimes when people have been reading as long as I have, they get what I call bad tarot habits, where suddenly they know everything and they come into a classroom not to learn, but to prove a point. I've had
Oh,
that
so we
happen.
don't bring that to her beginning
No,
class.
it's so rude. I take classes all the time. I love to take classes. Right now I've been taking some astrology classes, and I'm like I'm probably the most seasoned student in the class, and I just like to shut up and listen. And I don't go, oh, that person's wrong, or I know more. It's like, no, 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 no. I'm going to learn something if I just sit back and listen. And learning how to come from that beginner's mind, that really does require getting out of your ego. Because like you said, oftentimes I learn from my beginning students far more than they learn from me. Or being in a class and listening to some of the students who aren't as experienced, they still bring valuable insights, and it doesn't need to be about me.
Yeah, I think that's the way to approach it. I love going to a class. I love taking a class, even if it's something I know, because I always feel like you can get something, but I guess you can come if you're not a beginner, but only if you come with humility and a willingness to listen and learn something and see a different perspective. Let's put that around it.
That's the most
So we
important thing.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Now, we were talking before we went live, we were talking about the astrology that's going on right now. And I said, oh my God, it's been a hell of a week. What's going on astrologically? And you said Mars retrograde. I go, oh, no wonder. Oh my gosh. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Because I know there's some stuff. And we were talking about the countries astrology of what's going on with the election and everything like that.
Right,
So
right, right.
what's going on, lady?
Well, first of all, the planets this year have been wonky. And astrologers at the beginning of the year were just like, oh my God, 2020, we knew it was going to be a rough year. But, astrology is often theory. You don't know how it's going to turn out until later when you take a look and say, oh my God, well, that's what that was. But I was like sitting around, and I thought, I need to look at this Mars retrograde, what it's doing with the United States. And I love doing political astrology, by the way. I don't do it out in the open. I do it over on my Patreon account. And it's more like, me musing and just kind of teaching people and exploring it, because I think it's fascinating. Everything happens in cycles. Astrology is all about the cycles. And when you look at historical astrology and even what's happening right now, it's fascinating. I mean, for example, Uranus is in Taurus. And the last time Uranus was in Taurus was during the Great Depression. And our economy right now has totally taken a dump. I wasn't surprised. I wrote about that in 2018. But anyhow, so I decided, let me look and see what's happening with this Mars retrograde in the United States. So every country and every city and everything has an astrology birth chart. So I laid out the chart tonight, and I looked for Mars retrograde, and Mars retrograde is in the US's fourth house, which is the domestic sector. And the domestic sector, in a person's chart, it's your house. And Mars is currently in Aries. Now, Mars rules Aries. Mars loves to be in Aries. Mars is the god of war. Aries is fire. And retrograde, the energy gets weird. And so basically what I said, oh my God, our house is on fire. Think about that for a second. And our house, our country, all the West Coast is on fire. And I mean, we have dumpster fire news right now. Everything is on fire. And that is how I interpret it. Interpretation can always be, whatever, but it's just fascinating. And it's making really hard aspects right now to other things. And without getting complicated, all I can tell you is right now with Mars retrograde in the United States, fourth house, no surprise, our house is on fire. Someone's got to put that fire out. And I'm not just talking the literal fire, I'm talking also the figurative fire. We are in a total hot zone. A lot of things are going to improve when Jupiter and Saturn align in Aquarius later this year. But between now and December, I'm just saying, just buckle the F up. Buckle the F up. And this election is going to be happening with Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde.
Oh
Better vote, people, if you don't like the way the country looks. Or if you do love the way it looks, you better make sure you vote. This is going to be a very messy but important election.
Yeah. Well, I hope they don't screw up the ballots with that Mercury retrograde. Yikes.
The retrograde's in the morning, but it changes in the afternoon. So by the time the evening rolls around, Mercury is going to station direct. That's not much better, but I just think for everybody, if you don't like the way things are going, make sure you vote. If you swamp the polls with so many people that no one can deny it, that's how you're going to be able to make sure this election, we end and it's done and it's over then.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, to go on a little tangent here, you have a Patreon, and I'm so intrigued with
Mhm.
what you're doing with your Patreon. You're offering readings about the current events and things like that, like astrological things about the current events. What else is going on over there
Oh,
on your Patreon?
so over on Patreon, I started that earlier this year because, I do teaching, but I shy away from online teaching because it's a hassle. I never like the whole part about you've got to send out a newsletter and then you got to send out a reminder and then you got to send out a replay. It just always felt like a headache. And my friend Catherine said, "Hey, have you tried Patreon?" And my friend Damien talked about it too. I'm like, eh. And she goes, "No, no, no, you could teach on there." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Oh yeah, and it takes care of all this crap for you." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And so I explored it and I decided to start a Patreon account so I could teach classes. And the wonderful thing about Patreon is everything's hosted right on Patreon and they handle all the sending the emails and the replays. I don't have to touch any of it. So that's what I
Ah,
started the Patreon account for. But at the very low tier, people get the extended card of the day, with astrological tidbits, my political astrology, early sneak peeks of the horoscopes, and we do a community tarot practice every week. So that's at the very low tier. And then the upper tiers, they get different classes. So the next tier up is a monthly tarot class. The next tier up is you get the tarot class plus a monthly astrology class. And then there's a business class level too. So if you're like going pro, there's a level for that.
so great. I love it. I'm totally gonna go over there. Like, I'm so glad that we're having this so I know what I have to do after we're done with our
It makes
interview and
it
after our Q&A.
simple. And that's the big thing. It's like, I want to serve, I want to teach, but I don't want to deal with all this stuff. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
way it's all there. And the beautiful thing also on Patreon, people get the card of the day, it comes to their inbox. So in the morning, you get your card of the day and all the astrology stuff, it comes to you right in your inbox every single morning.
So cool.
I
So
mean, you
cool.
don't have to go to the Patreon thing to go find it. It comes to your inbox. I mean, once my friends turned me on to it, I'm like, okay, let me try it. And I mean, they've been using it, Catherine's been using it for quite some time, and Damien's been using it for years. And Damien had also told me how great it was. And I just thought one more thing, but it really is a brilliant format because everything comes directly to the other person's inbox. I don't have to chase them. They don't have to go to another thing to find me. There's no hassle. It's easy for
That's
everybody.
so
I
I
love
just am intrigued. I'm intrigued with the astrology lesson. I would love to go and get your weekly astrology, monthly astrology lesson, or whatever it is. That's
Well,
like such
also
a
the
cool
other
thing.
thing is all the old lessons are there for replay. So let's say you come on now, you can go back and if you're at the astrology level, you can go back and you can watch all the old astrology classes that we've already taught. You can also watch the tarot classes if you're at that level. So I mean, you can also go back to the replays. And the beautiful thing about Patreon is people can come in and leave whenever they want. They can go up a tier. And then if let's say your budget is like, oh, my budget's really tight, then they might want to go down and go to the low level. So it really, really is super convenient.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm totally gonna check it out. I'm gonna be signing up for your astrology class, lady.
And you should
Because I
start something there because it makes it so easy for you.
Yeah, I mean that's also I'm gonna check it out for that too. But I'm all intrigued to the astrology because I have a very basic, very basic working knowledge of astrology that serves me in my tarot practice. But I'm not an astrologer, and I've always been like, God, I want to learn more. I want to learn like, the different. I want to memorize the houses. I want to get
Yeah.
into it in a deeper way. I want to do progress charts and things like that.
Oh
I
yeah.
can't do.
We're getting to those
Uh,
soon. I
oh,
love
okay.
I love teaching astrology. Actually got into astrology before tarot. So tarot was my second love, but tarot was my main love. Astrology is like my fling on the side. But I actually, what's really funny, what people don't understand is I use astrology every single day of my life. I use astrology for everything. I plan my entire business around astrology. Everything is always, I check the stars before I do anything. I do not mess around with that ever.
Yeah. Well, I
Mm-mm.
mean, I do. I think that's super important. And even a basic understanding of astrology
Yeah.
can really help guide you because if you understand, oh, It's, you know, like it's Mercury retrograde. Okay, well, this is probably not the time that I want to start my business or sign a contract or
Mhm.
do something like that. I want to do all my preliminary stuff. You can do all the back end stuff or go back and fix something during that
Yep.
time. But it's really not the time to initiate any new thing. And you just wait until Mercury goes out of retrograde, which is like what, a month and a half, 2 months. It's not, usually isn't very long.
It's about
And then
3 weeks.
you do it. Oh yeah, 3 weeks. Then you do it then, right? So then, yeah.
And if you
So it,
understand
even
the
at
moon
basic
cycle,
knowledge.
yeah, and if you
Mhm.
understand the moon cycles too, and where the moon is at any given day, like if today the moon is in Leo, and there's no aspects today, so this is a perfect day for you and I to be hanging out. Yes, you
Exactly.
guys, I checked the planets before I agreed to this. I'm like, oh yeah, moon is in Leo, and there's no aspects. We'll have like a really easy time.
Yeah, and it's good for showing, teaching, leading, all of those
Yeah,
things. It'll be great for that.
absolutely.
Perfect. Well, you ready to get to some questions? I'm sure we have a lot of questions. So
Yes.
let's jump in and I'll start looking at what we've got here. All right. Um, it's so nice. Oh, hi Jenny. Some wonderful friends on here. Love it.
Oh, good.
Okay. Everyone's saying hello, hello. All right. Everyone's saying hello. Okay. All right, Bruce has a question for you.
Yes,
Why
Bruce.
why is divination not considered cool anymore? So that we're going to get a little bit into that.
Oh,
What is divination and what isn't
well,
divination
first
and
look
why
at
is
my
it not
face.
cool?
Well, here's the thing. Divination is the ability to look ahead and try to, see what may be coming for us. So it's really prediction or fortune telling. And it's so interesting because every so often somebody comes along and says divination is out, and they really want to like downgrade it, like, oh, it's fortune telling, it's BS. And a lot of readers will do this. They'll say, I don't do prediction, I don't do divination, I don't believe in that. So the reason why I like to say divination's always in. When people come to a tarot reader, they're not coming to me for therapy, although sometimes it's therapeutic. They're coming because what they want to know is, am I going to get paid or laid? And so tarot and astrology, what we're trying to do is we're trying to determine where you are and where you're headed towards and what the likely outcome is based on where you are right now. It's like the weatherman. The weatherman makes a prediction every day. It's not always right either. I don't always, we hear rain in the thing. I bring my umbrella, no rain happens. So it's not a perfect science. But I think what happens is a lot of people assume that there's something about it that you shouldn't be trying to foretell the future because like somehow that's taken away people's free will. And I don't agree with that. And there's also a certain school of people who read tarot that do it more for a therapeutic reason. And they really look down on divination. They look down on divination like, again, it's like fortune telling. It's like the old school thing. And I don't agree with that because A, I'm old school. But B, also, my theory is this. I believe in both fate and free will. I do believe there are some things in our life that are fated. But I also believe a lot of the things that are happening in our lives are based on the decisions we're making. And if you have an opportunity to see what's coming up ahead, well, you have an opportunity to change things too. I want to know what's happening. So if I don't like the way it looks, I'm going to change things. And so when I'm looking at tarot or astrology and I'm doing it from a divination perspective, it's never to just say, well, you're going to meet this dude and that's that, life is set. It's always like, okay, here's the potential. And let's get some strategies to make this work to your benefit, especially if the outcome isn't looking good. So that's how I tend to approach it. But yeah, why is divination not cool? I don't know. Some people dictate it's not cool, and I can't stand those people. I'm like, yeah, the reason why they don't do prediction is because they can't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because they can't.
It's interesting. It's interesting because I see that predictive part. I definitely see. I definitely do predictive reading. However, maybe this is not the situation for you. Sometimes I'm looking at a reading and you're going to say, oh yeah, it's definitely going in this direction or it's definitely going in that direction. And you have those readings where you can just see it and it's
Right.
there. Other times I see a reading where it's like, it's showing me in the cards, you can get to this thing, but it's contingent on
Yes.
this thing that needs to happen first. And so in those cases, there's a contingency, like, well, for example, you're going to get a job,
Right.
but it's saying you need to get out there and hustle and you need to show yourself more or be more visible.
Yep.
And if you don't do the visibility thing, then it probably is delaying that outcome. It's not that the
Yep.
outcome isn't coming, but it's delaying that outcome. And if you want to have it faster, it's contingent on you taking some action. And that sometimes shows up in readings. Now, sometimes there's such a strong force in such a direction that I call it a destiny. However,
Yeah.
I'm of the 100% in the free will camp, that you can even have
Mhm.
something so strong as a destiny, but you can turn that car around from going off the cliff, or turn that car around from going to wherever it is that you want to go, and go in a different direction. However, those moving off the track of destiny takes a lot of will, a lot of concentration, a lot of focus, and a lot of being really present and paying attention. Like if you
Yeah.
just ignore it, you're going to go off that cliff, or you're going to do that, or go to that beautiful treasure, or whatever it is. But it doesn't mean bad destiny. It can be good destiny too.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So I just feel like there's always that chance that you can turn it around, but there's some streams that are so strong that you're like riding the whitewater rapid. Can you get out of the boat? Sure. But it's going to take a lot of work to get out of that boat,
Well, one of my
So,
favorite stories that I like to tell people is I got a reading from a lady once, many, many years ago. And at the time I was dating a guy, and he wasn't being honest with me. He was being really shady, and he had somebody else that he was seeing. And I'm very straightforward. I'm pretty confrontational when it comes to stuff like that. I'm like, just tell me the truth. And so anyhow, I decided, let me go see a tarot reader. And the tarot reader says things are not going to work out with him and her, and she's going to be on the outside looking in. I said, really? And I went home and I dumped him that day. Despite the card showing there was going to be this perfect outcome, I dumped him that day. I'm very cut and dried when it comes to romance. And anyhow, years later, he actually ended up having children with her, and he was with her. But years later, they did break up, and him and I became friends. I like being friends with my exes. I tend to be like that. And he and I was visiting him in New York, and he said, let's go get pizza. So we were at a pizza parlor, and here she comes, and she's standing in the window looking in at us. And all I could think of was that tarot reading. I mean, it was 20 years later, but yes, she was on the outside looking in, watching us eat this pizza. It was very weird. So readings sometimes are like
wow.
that too. It isn't the way you think it is. Sometimes, you'll get a reading, you think it's one way. And in that case, I did change my destiny. I dumped him immediately. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to wait around. Nah, dumped him. He had a lot of regrets about it, but later on we became friends, and it was very funny because the reading was exactly what that lady said, on the outside looking in.
Well, it was probably even that moment is very symbolic of what was happening, that you were able to reconcile and have a friendship, and she maybe couldn't have that closeness, or there was too much animosity between them, or there was a break between them that separated
Yeah.
them. And she didn't come in and sit down and have pizza with you guys. So clearly
Oh, no,
something was going on.
she was afraid of me because I almost beat her ass too. I've got a violent streak. People who know me really well know that I'm not anymore. I'm a very mellow tarot lady now, but I've got a red hot, and I'm very physical. So yeah, no, that's not something I mean, I'm laughing now. It's not something I'm very proud of, but no, she's actually terrified of me. If she sees me, she runs the other side of the street, even to this
Oh
day.
my
I know it's kind of shameful, but it's funny now that I'm old and stuff. I can laugh about it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. We have Lucky Heart who has a question. Is Jupiter still in retrograde? Is Jupiter still in retrograde?
Nope, Jupiter went direct. In fact, Jupiter just went direct. Let's see, yesterday, Saturday. So
Ah,
it's direct.
perfect. And what does it mean when Jupiter is direct versus retrograde?
Well, the outer planets go retrograde every year, but their effects are very subtle. The ones that we're going to feel the ones we're going to feel the most intensely are Mercury, Venus, or Mars retrograde, because those are the personal planets. So those tend to affect us more directly. The outer planets, when they're retrograde, they're more subtle, because the outer planets tend to affect more like society. But when Jupiter's retrograde, it gives you an opportunity to to really do some learning, to do some deep diving into your spirituality and your belief system. And now that Jupiter is direct, you have an opportunity to take the knowledge that you've been gathering over the last couple of months and think about, well, how can I apply what I've learned? That's one, like, in a nutshell. All you got to remember when you're looking at your personal chart, though, you have to have an astrologer look and see what house is being hit, and if there was any aspects that were happening that were difficult or favorable during the time that planet was retrograde. So it's a little more
That's why.
complex than that.
Yeah, that's why it's good to have an astrological reading, not just do it off of a thing. That's always
Yeah.
the thing. Like I say, like, yeah, you can go to tarot.com and get a free tarot reading, but you're missing the whole big part of it, which is
Yep.
the intuition. There's no intuition in a computer. It's just spewing out the meaning of the card. Now you
Mhm.
might be able to make that connection, or here's my question,
Right.
and I'm gonna, but having an experienced reader tell you, and the same thing with an astrologer, they're gonna
Yep.
pick up on things. It's like the difference between going to a doctor and looking up your symptoms on
Yes.
WebMD. You know?
Absolutely. And also, astrology, it's a lot of math, but it's also a lot of intuition, because you still have to feel out, well, what does this mean for this person? Because let's pretend you and I had the exact same birth date and birth time. It's still going to be very different because we have different life experiences. And a good astrologer has to be able to look at them and say, okay, well, Madame Pamita and the tarot lady have the exact same birth date and the exact same aspects, but how is this playing out for them?
I also think too, it's like there's a very interesting thing, which is, I think that you, as an experienced tarot reader, I can relate it to this.
Mhm.
As a tarot reader, when I was a beginner, I would look at each card and the position and the layout, and I would just go, okay, this is past. All right, this is, I'm looking at the
Yeah.
card of the past. Now I'm looking at the card of the present. Now I'm looking at the card of the future. But as you get it more experienced as a reader, you start looking holistically at everything that's out there, and some cards will pop up for you. It doesn't really,
Yes.
you're looking at the layout, but you're also looking at the connections between the cards, and you'll see sometimes constellations of cards. I would call them
Yes.
constellations of cards, where you're like, oh wow, so they've got the sun, and they've got temperance, and they've got the empress. Okay, those are the ones I'm really paying attention to, and the other ones are kind of like whatever. So you might see something that pops out at you, or you might look holistically at the whole reading
Yep.
and all the cards that are out there and say, wow, this is a really great reading. Okay, we got a few little things we have to work on, but things look really good for you, or something like that. So sometimes I even start out the reading just talking holistically about what I see, and then we go into the cards and each card and talking about the position, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that a skilled astrologer would be the same way. You're going to look
Mhm.
at the holistic chart and then dive into each planet, each house, what house
Yeah.
it's in, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah. You look at the
and
whole
it's,
thing. I mean, when you do an astrology chart, what you do is you look at the first thing you do is you look at where's the most action happening in this chart. That's the first thing you do in an astrology reading. Where is the action happening? And right now, for everybody, the big thing you want to look at is where that cap stack is, where Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, which are all in Capricorn right now, where are they hanging out in your chart? Because that's going to tell you where a lot of things are amplified right now.
yeah. So it's like, that's why I love going to astrologers. I mean, I know, as I said, I know enough to get in trouble with astrology, but it's like, it's fascinating for me when you go to an astrologer and how they break it down, and they really can be
Yes.
so insightful about your personality. I mean, I've had sessions with astrologers where we sat for an hour and they just nailed everything. They didn't even know me, and
Yes.
they nailed everything about me, and it was amazing. Yeah. And even stuff that I didn't know at the time. I remember long ago, going to my friend Yolanda Valenzuela. She's an amazing astrologer. She said, you're going to be writing. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
writing? I'm not going to be writing. Writing? No, that's not me. And sure enough, I ended up doing tons of writing, articles, books, and everything.
Right.
So even things that I didn't see at the time. It's amazing. Yeah. So fascinating. Let's get to another question. We got lots of questions. So I'm having questions for you. All right. So, what's the best way to ground, or I guess Joanna is asking the question, what's the best way to ground, or what activity would you do or recommend during retrograde planets?
During retrograde, well, it depends. You have to look at which one. If it's Mercury retrograde, first of all, you want to slow the hell down. I mean, that is a time where you want to be very mindful about your communication, how you're using your words. Are you listening more than you're talking, or vice versa? You want to pay attention to your travel plans. You look at what the planet is all about, and Mercury is about communication, it's about travel. And you want to be careful signing contracts. You don't want to be, this is not the time to be signing an NFL contract. You want to wait until it's over before you do that. When Venus is retrograde, then it's not a good time to get married. It's not a good time to get plastic surgery. I mean, your facelift can wait. Venus retrograde is a time where if you begin a relationship, oftentimes it can be challenging. Maybe the relationship might not last. And sometimes what I find is when Venus is retrograde, old lovers come back into the picture. One thing that's good to do during Venus retrograde, if someone owes you money, go after it. Now, Mars retrograde, which we have right now, and Mercury is going to be retrograde soon, Mars retrograde is a time to review your relationship with anger, your relationship with aggression. You know, what gets me angry? What ticks me off? And it's also a time where you want to, too, similar to Mercury retrograde, you want to slow down. You want to be mindful before you take action on something, because Mars is the planet of action. You do not want to start a war. You do not want to start a lawsuit. You do not want to pick a fight. Whoever picks a fight loses during a Mars retrograde. And it's also not a good time for elective surgery. So, you know, avoid surgery on any of those 3 retrogrades if you can. Those are the 3 you need to be most concerned with.
I think of all retrogrades, if you were to make a blanket statement, and you correct me if I'm wrong because you're the astrologer, but I always think of those times as review, revisit, revise, do the rewords. So if you need to go back during, let's say you had a very bad breakup with someone and you've moved on, but you always feel like bad about how it ended between the 2 of you, a Venus retrograde might be a great way to go back and to make peace with that person, or to, you know, kind of put it to bed, or to, you know, have a cleaner ending to something. So I always think of those retrogrades as great opportunities. Actually, you know, this whole, you've been around long enough and I've been around long enough to remember Mercury retrograde used to be like, oh gosh, you know, my I got to make sure that, you know, I am careful with my emails, or my computer doesn't break down, or I have my good you know, surge protector during that time. You know, that was the concept of Mercury retrograde. And then all of a sudden, like 10 years ago, all of a sudden it became like Chicken Little, the sky is falling.
Yes. Oh my God.
Happening. And it's like, it never used to be this big, dramatic, scary, oh my God, hide your head under the covers kind of thing.
But you know what? The internet did that, because the internet now, there's more people talking about it. And there's some people who are like out there promoting a lot of fear. And I'm not someone who tends to look at anything like that. I'm like, okay, well, here's what's happening. Well, what do we do now? You know, I'm a strategist. I've got Mars in Virgo. Everything's strategy, strategy, strategy. You know, if there's something going on, I'll give you an example. You know, when I had Saturn in my 2nd house, one of my friends who's an astrologist says, well, it looks like you're going to be broke. I'm like, no, that's not how this works. And so I set a goal during Saturn retrograde. My goal is to pay off my mortgage early. So I got super hyper disciplined. I set the goal. I had everything mapped out. I mean, I was clipping coupons like crazy, everything. I paid off my mortgage 14 years early, because I didn't look at it like, you're going to be broke. I'm like, Saturn loves discipline. And that I knew if I was disciplined with whatever was coming in, how little or how much, I was going to be able to reach goals. That's how you use astrology. And that's how you use tarot. You never look at it like, oh, looks like you're doomed. It's like, okay, what's the best I can do with this situation? Let me make this work for me. That's how you have to think about it.
Exactly. I always think there are energies that are, same with the cards. It's like, what are you dealing with? And how do you, as you say, how do you strategize around the energies that are around? And if it's a Mercury retrograde, okay, it's not the time to sign your contract. It's not the time to begin your business. It's not the time to shake hands on some, you know, make a deal with someone, but it's a great time to go back and revise something. It's a great time to go back and fix something that hasn't been working. Maybe you have a system in place that isn't really functioning. It's really janky, and you need to go back and fix it and do it right this time. It's a great time to do that. So I think of that. I think of it much more in that way. And I'm glad I got a add a girl from you on that too, because that's how I feel about it. And if a real astrologer thinks so, then I must not be too far off.
No, right? You're right on. And the other thing, the biggest thing that people have to remember is to just slow the hell down and be mindful. And I mean, that's the key to good living anyways. You should be mindful. Most people sleepwalk through life and they're like, well, how did I get here? I'm like, remember when you dated that douchebag and you never got rid of him? Well, that's why you're exactly where you are right now. You should have got rid of that ass a long time ago.
You are just, this is what I love about Theresa, is that you are no bones. You will tell it like it is. I love it. I've always
some
been
people
that
don't
way.
like, some people do not like that though. They get very, very offended. And I've got also the sense of humor of a 14-year-old boy. I get along great with my teenage nephews because my sense of humor is really dirty. And, you know, some people get really, really upset about it. They're like, oh my God, the tarot lady said a dirty joke. She used the F word. She told me to get rid of the douche. And it's like, but this is a straightforward thing. And if that's not what you like, there are plenty of people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. And I'm not one of them.
This is so funny. You know what? I have friends that are like, I mean, you're my friend too, but I have friends that are really outspoken and I love them. I'm the little mousy Cancer who stands in the background, like going like, did she say that? Oh my God, that's so funny. I always try to be very diplomatic, presented in a very gentle, I'm a mama, I'm a Cancer, I'm a mama. What am I going to do?
I've got Venus in Cancer. I can be very soft when the time is appropriate, but I'm straightforward. And that's the thing. I don't lie. I'm straightforward. I'm not going to fluff something up. If I see the tower is falling, I'm going to tell you, but I'm also going to tell you how to get out of there. My husband always says, I'm the tarot reader to have by your side if there's a zombie apocalypse. I will get you out of there. I'm not going to be like, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to be like, listen, the zombies are coming. Let's do this. So that's how I tend to approach life.
Yeah. I love it. I am very much more of a, I'm going to be your mama. I'm going to make sure you feel okay, but we're going to get you through this. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you in a way that makes you not feel sad. I don't want you to feel sad. I want you to get you there like a mama will. But my friends that are outspoken and tell it like it is, I always stand back and I'm always like, oh my God, I love that.
Well, I'm the mother you bring when you're in a knife fight.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Because we're going to get you out of there safely.
I'm going to
make sure they don't get in it.
I'm the one you bring to avoid the knife fight. You're the one, if the knife fight is unavoidable, you bring Theresa.
There.
Perfect. People are asking, where's the Patreon link? I guess people are going to your site and looking for it. Where do they find it?
Well, I'll just put it in the thing.
Yeah, you can put it in chat and make sure it says to all panelists and attendees. Otherwise it'll just be sending it to me.
Yep. It's Patreon. You go to patreon.com, the tarot lady. And again, the nice thing about Patreon, you can come in and out as you want. Somebody mentioned on here also that Patreon got sued and you should have a different type of alternative things. I have a website. So Patreon's just something I do on the side. I have other business things.
And people are asking I don't understand what Patreon is. It's a subscription. So it's basically different levels of subscription. And at each level you get, like at the low level, entry level, you get a certain amount of things. At the middle level, or small, medium, large, you're going to get everything. Medium, you're going to get some of the things, and entry level, small, you're going to get a few things. So
yes. And the person who said about having other things, of course, there are people who have their whole businesses on Instagram or Facebook or on Patreon. You shouldn't have that. I mean, it's just, if one of those platforms disappears, you're screwed. That's why I have a website. Yeah. I mean, that's my hub. My bread and butter is my website.
Don't talk to me about Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Instagram the most, but I always feel like Facebook came in. I was there before Facebook was involved, and it was so much better back then. Back in the old days, Sunny, it was a lot better. But
I agree.
Yes, and they tend to punish you punish businesses and try and choke your reach to get you to pay to reach people. So,
and I find the best clients don't come from Facebook. The best conversations never happen on Facebook. The best conversations I have always happen on Twitter. Some of my best clients have come from Twitter.
I'm not active on Twitter. I picked one, and I picked Instagram. So that's my one. That's the one that's really me. The rest of them, I have my assistant, Bridget, takes care of. She puts things up there. I don't know how she does it. All right. So, okay, here's a good question. Mary says, is there a way to spin the Three of Swords in a positive manner? Oh, I got an answer for that, but I'm sure you do too. Let's talk about the Three of Swords.
What I
pull it out while you're talking.
Three of Swords is, and I say the same thing for the Tower, a good storm clears the air. That sometimes it is really important that we do go through a storm in order to get clarity. And also sometimes the Three of Swords can represent an ending that needs to happen. Like it's been going on long enough. It's time. It's done. It's finally over. You get the courage to cut the cords. So I don't look at it always as, oh my God, you're going to get dumped. Oftentimes it's saying it's time to cut the cord. You're finally getting the courage to do that. Yeah. And the good storm clears the air.
So here's what I have to say about Three of Swords. And it is something, it doesn't always show up. So understanding that when we do a reading, we're looking at a range of meanings of the cards. There's a whole range on each card of what it can mean. So this isn't always the same for every person every time it comes up in a reading. It's going to mean something different, and we've got a range of meanings, and we intuitively pull the one that is correct for you. Okay. Now, one of the things that in my book, I talk about this. So my book, Madame Pamita's Magical Tarot. And I'm going to talk about this in my scary tarot card class too. We've got Making Friends with the Scary Tarot Cards. This is a scary card that nobody likes to see come up in their reading. Let's talk about this. We've got 3 swords. Swords represent thoughts, ideas, and beliefs, right? Things that are up in your head, concepts, ideas, beliefs, things that are up in your head, right? We have the ideas creating pain in the emotions, the heart, right? The things that you're thinking are creating your own pain. Now, look at this heart on the Rider-Waite-Smith. The heart's in good shape. You know, if we took out those swords, it's not bleeding, it's not torn, it's not dripping blood, it's not shriveling up. It's fine. So if we pull out the thoughts, ideas, and beliefs that are creating pain, we're going to be able to heal our heart again. So when this card shows up, I'm like, sometimes what are you thinking? What are you believing that's creating pain for yourself, right? I must have Johnny and I can't have anybody else. And Johnny's the only one. And Johnny hasn't talked to me in 5 years and he blocked my phone number and he just, but I must have him. Are you creating that pain for yourself by having that concept? Yes, you are, because you're not thinking in terms of like, well, okay, things didn't work out with Johnny, but maybe there's someone better for me than Johnny. Obviously there's someone better than Johnny. So
I always say the cure for a bad relationship is a new one.
If you want to get over a guy, get under another one, right? But that's the way you look at that 3 of Swords. It's like, okay, yeah, you are in pain. There's no doubt about that. But what are you doing what are you thinking that's creating your pain, and how can you change that thought? That's what I look at it. So
I agree.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So Kathy is asking the question, when I read tarot, I like jumping cards, but I also would like to, I don't know what that means. I would like to learn how to do different spreads. Is it okay? Oh, the cards jumping out when you're shuffling.
Yes.
That's what that means. But I would like to learn how to do different spreads. Is it okay to use 1 card or 2 for an answer? And why use clarifiers? So there's a lot of questions in there. Okay, jumping cards. Let's talk about jumping cards.
Well, when the
jumping card, you're shuffling and it goes, oops, it pops out. Look what popped out. The world. Okay, it's has a message for you, right? Go ahead.
So I always say what falls to the floor comes to the door. So if a card jumps out, I want to pay attention. What I always do is I'll put it aside and I come back to it after I do my spread. So that's how I tend to do that. And I think they're very significant. They're trying to get your attention. However, once in a while, I would have a client that was really big into jumpers, and they would shuffle it to make sure something would jump out, like it would be significant. And so in those cases, I would always say, you're clumsy. The cards don't mean shit. So it really, if it has to fall out on its own, it has to fall out not with you trying to make it happen, and then it's significant. Then it's like, ding, 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 ding. This card's trying to get your attention. Got a message for you.
Yeah, that's very funny because it's the same thing with candles. It's like if you're reading a candle burning, right? Is your candle flame flickering? First thing to check, do you got a draft in your room? You got a fan on? Not everything is a sign. You know what I mean? Not everything is. Sometimes it is, but not everything is. And that same thing, if you're making the card, the world jumped out.
Yes.
Look at that.
Kind of like one time years ago, I was doing a Ouija board with this girl who wanted to be famous. And we were like doing it and she kept like pushing it. Am I going to be famous? And she kept pushing it to be yes. It's like, you can't push it. It doesn't work out that way. You've got to like let things happen. And it's same like with the jumpers. They have to like jump out on their own.
That's what spells are for. If you want to make something happen, do a spell. Don't do a divination.
Yes, exactly. The divination can show you the chances, and then you do a spell to help, make something work for you.
Exactly. All right. So is it one or 2 cards for an answer? I think that's a pretty
sure. You can do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, one or two cards is great for, I think if you're doing readings for yourself in particular, you don't need to get into a full Celtic cross spread. And in fact, I think that's, yeah, when you're doing a reading for yourself, you can't be the objective, and beyond one or two cards, you're going to start going, oh, I know what that tower means. It means that I'm going to have, I'm going to take a break. That's what it means.
Yeah, you end up it becomes too much. It's information overload. Go simple. Simple is best.
Yeah, one or two cards are great. All right. Let's see. Let's see. People are making comments. I'm looking for a question. So I'm looking at your comments, you guys, and they're great. Lots of people sharing their stories about astrology and tarot. Let's see. Oh, is Theresa from the East Coast? MB wants to know if you're from the East Coast. Where are you from? I know where you're from.
I'm from the Midwest. I lived out in the East Coast for a little while, but I'm Midwest.
Yes, and if you watch Laverne and Shirley, isn't that where Laverne and Shirley took place?
Yes.
That's a secret. You're gonna have to do your old TV history to find out where she is.
Oh my God. And yeah, people used to ask me too, is it like it there? And I'm like, no, it's
I
not
know.
like that at all. We don't have a Schatz brewery.
No. Let's talk about reversals. Mary wants to ask the question, and that's probably, we may get to another one after this. Yeah. Mary wants to know, can you explain reversed cards and how they apply to love readings, but it's really how they apply to every reading, because it can be for everything. So talk about reversals and how everybody has a different take on reversals. That's the thing I would say.
Right.
I'm curious what your take on reversals is.
Well, when I started reading tarot, I didn't have a teacher. I had a book and it had reversals. So I assumed you had to use reversals. So anyhow, I always read with reversals. I didn't think anything of it until the internet, and I discovered so many readers don't use reversals. And a lot of readers have their own reasons why they don't use them. But I also have a very yogic thought about it. And BKS Iyengar, who's one of my idols, said many years ago, when people do inversions, if you don't do inversions, you become conceited because you only see things one way then. And I love that, because when I look at tarot and I do a reversal, it gives me a whole new way of looking at it. So I think it adds a lot to the reading. It can change the dynamic on how the cards interact. It gives you 78 new ways of looking at the cards. So I like it because A, I like variety, and B, I think that it can really, again, add a lot, but they're not necessary to do a good reading. I've had readings with people who don't use reversals, and they've been perfectly good readings. Super good.
Yeah, I'm a non-reversal person with an asterisk next to it, because what I do is when I'm doing a reading for someone, I clear the cards, and what I'm doing when I clear the cards is I'm putting them all upright. So I start out with my cards all upright. Now, when I'm shuffling, or if I have, face-to-face, and the client, back in the days when we did face-to-face, we had a client shuffling and the cards got mixed at that time. Then I take it as significant, like that jumper, the card that's a jumper. I look and I go, oh, wow, there's a reversal here, because either I did something or the client did something when they were shuffling. And then to me, it's very meaningful. And then I look at that reversal as blocked energy around that topic. So it's the energy is blocked. So some people will say it's the opposite of what it is. That's one way of people doing reversals, but I look at it as blocked, like the thing wants to come through, whatever it is, but there's a blockage of some kind around it. So
and it could be a delay, a blockage. There's so many ways to look at it. But again, if you don't feel like that's your jam, you don't have to do it. Yeah.
I mean, I was doing reversals, and then I had one of my teachers long ago, she's an amazing woman. She didn't do reversals. And I'm like, oh, that gives me permission that I don't have to do it, or I can do it the way I want to do it. And you'll find different readers have different styles. And it doesn't mean, because really it's the opening up of the intuition,
whatever works for you, whatever gets it working for you.
Perfect. Here's an interesting question, and this will probably be our last one. Then we're going to talk about what you got going up, remind everybody where you're going to be, what's going on. Camille says, how do I take the information from a reading without unintentionally changing a path I actually want? So the reading says, happy days, sun card is your outcome card. Everything's going to be great. Well, now that they've had a reading, can they screw it up, I guess is the question.
Well, sure, I could go, look, let's say I got really great cards. I could be so happy, I'm going to go out and celebrate and smoke crack. Well, now I'm going to change my destiny. I mean, that's common sense. But if everything's doing good and it's saying you're on the right track, then you want to keep moving towards your goals and know that you're on the right track and just keep doing that. Just don't do anything like, I mean, you can always change your destiny, but that's like if you see a bad destiny, that doesn't mean you're doomed. It means, okay, pay attention. If you get something that looks really great, it's like, okay, this is looking good. Keep moving towards that. You've got the wind at your back.
Keep doing what you're doing. Keep on trucking, right?
Just be aware. Be aware.
Yeah.
That's not that, I mean, I had a lady one time that got a reading, and I had warned her about her car. And I said, listen, you got to watch your car. It looks like you're going to have a lot of expenses. She goes, I got a brand new car. She got really angry at me. I'm like, well, I'm not God. I'm probably wrong then. Well, I saw her 2 weeks later. She goes, guess what happened? I got drunk and drove my car into a tree. Yeah, it got real expensive for her because that's how dumb she was. I mean, if I had a new car and I got a reading saying a lot of expenses, last thing I'd be doing is going out drunk and driving.
Yeah, that's a bad idea anytime, I think.
Well, yeah, of course.
But especially if you get a reading that says your car is going to have expensive repairs on it. Yeah, I think that's that thing. If you have a reading that's challenging, that we have some challenging things showing up for you, it's like, oh, it's time to make a shift in your direction or make some changes. And if you have a reading that's saying everything's going great, then don't make any dramatic changes. Keep doing what you're doing, because whatever you're doing is leading you in a great direction.
Yes.
So,
but it also doesn't mean that you get to be passive. If you have cards that say, hey, everything looks great, you're going to meet this hot chick, it's going to be fabulous, you're going to get a great job, that doesn't mean you sit at home eating bonbons and never go out and apply for the job or go out to meet somebody. It's not, I always say, especially with love readings, sometimes people get a love reading and it'll show, yeah, you're going to meet somebody. And then they bitch that they don't meet anybody, but it's like they didn't do anything. You still have to like align with the universe. If this is showing potential, you still have to align. I always say the only time someone's showing up at your door for romance, it's either Prince Charming with a glass slipper, that doesn't happen, or it's a porno movie. You know,
the pizza delivery guy.
Yes.
I got some extra sausage on your pizza, lady.
In real life, if you see like there are these potentials, you still have to do your work. You still have to get out there.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be in the flow of life. I always just say, well, that thing can come to you, but if you put your back into it, it's going to come to you faster, right?
Yeah, you know? Absolutely.
Luck is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. That's how you make your luck, right? You make your luck. Alrighty, well, so where are they going to be finding you? They're going to find you at thetarotlady.com.
Yep.
I can put that into the chat. That's where they can put everything about you, the classes and all of that stuff is going to be up there, right?
Yep. That's where you can find my classes, my podcasts, my blog posts, my free horoscopes that are up there every month. And you can find what things I'm selling, my books, you can buy books, all of that. So that's my big information hub. And Patreon is where I'm teaching classes and doing extended card of the day things. So there's I've got a lot of different things for people.
And you've got that tarot class coming up in October.
Yes.
And your new book. And they can buy your new book, right? The Tarot No Questions Asked book is something that they can get into if they're interested in tarot. And I'm going to be a guest on your podcast coming up in a couple of weeks, right? I mean, we're doing it tomorrow, but it's going to come out in a couple of weeks where we're going to be talking about spells and astrology. So magic and astrology.
Magical timing, which is very, very important. You always want to stack the odds in your favor. And astrology can help you to stack your magical odds in your favor.
So this is something I talk about in my book, but I'm going to go into in greater depth on our conversation. We're going to talk more about it, so it's going to be really fun. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us next week, you guys. Thank you guys for being here. Thank Theresa for being here and sharing all your wisdom and your fun and your sass. And you know I adore you.
I adore you too.
And we're going to be next week. We'll be here again. And next week, our guest is going to be Paige Ozma Ashmore, who is the creator of Tarot of the Kingdoms, which is a beautiful, beautiful tarot deck. So we're going to be talking with Paige and learning all about that and talking more about tarot, and probably talking more about art and tarot, symbolism and tarot and stuff like that. So I hope you join us next week for that. Let's see. Domenica invited us to a meeting. Is that this meeting or someone else's meeting? If you want to join, you can always go to spellsquad.com, and spellsquad.com will give you the link to join. It's always the same link every week. So if you've got the link once, it's the same link. You can add it to your calendar. We're looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you so much again, Theresa. Encouraging everyone to check you out. They're going to check you out. They're already asking about the Patreon and about the classes and things like that. So I'm sure you're going to have a few more additions to all the fun stuff that you're doing. And I'm sure we're going to have you back here again in a few months, like we did before. We had you here before. You were a fan fave. We had a bunch of people in the room here, so we'll definitely have you back on again.
I would love that.
So great to see you. I'll talk to you tomorrow when we do our podcast. So I'll talk to you then. Podcast will be coming out in a few weeks. It's not going to be coming out tomorrow.
About 2 weeks, people.
Okay. All right, you guys. Thanks again. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.